I had never expected my life to unfold like this. A year and a half ago, I was just a man fulfilling his wife's grandfather's last wish. Marrying Lucia was a mere formality. A wealthy, beautiful woman from a prominent family, Lucia had always been cold, distant, and far from affectionate. When we got married, we had an agreement. After a year, we would divorce. She would go back to her first love, Makoto, who had been away for years. Simple, right? But life doesn't go according to plan, does it? It didn't take long for me to realize that Lucia was never truly mine. The moment her grandfather passed away, she contacted Makoto, the one she had kept waiting all these years. The moment he returned to the country, her cold demeanor melted away, replaced by an excited, joyful woman I had never seen before. It hurt. I thought that if I tried hard enough, if I put in the effort, maybe I could win her heart. But, instead of pushing me away, she brought him back into our lives as if I didn't exist. I drove them around like a chauffeur, watched as they laughed together, as she looked at him with affection I'd never received. I should have been happy for her, right? But instead, I felt a cold jealousy coursing through me. How could I stand there, a man with no true role in her life, while her first love walked back into it so easily? But even then, I couldn't let go. I had been married to Lucia for a year. I had sacrificed, invested, and promised her a future. I couldn't just walk away from it. So, I began thinking about other ways to claim my share of the future. Divorce. I didn't care about love anymore. Money, however, was a different story. Lucia was worth billions. If we divorced, half of that would be mine. The thought of $2 billion in my hands was enough to drive me. I could live a life of freedom, buy a house far away from this charade, and start over with someone who truly wanted me. But Lucia, cold, calculating Lucia, seemed to always be one step ahead. Even when I didn't speak, I could feel her eyes on me, like she was reading my thoughts. How? I had no idea. It was unsettling, the way she could shift between her detached businesswoman persona and something else. Something warmer. I needed her out of my life. But the moment I started thinking it, she caught me. She caught me in the act of calculating my future without her. And in that moment, I realized just how deep the manipulation went. She didn't just marry me for convenience. She was playing a game that I hadn't even realized I was part of. But that's when I made my decision. Divorce. And I would make sure it would be in my favor. I would take the $2 billion and walk away. If Lucia wanted to go back to Makoto, fine. She could, as long as I got what I was entitled to. What I didn't realize, though, was that Lucia wasn't as cold as I thought. And the game she was playing? It wasn't just about love or money. It was about control, and I was losing it. The days after Makoto's return were strange. Lucia, who had once been so distant, now seemed to carry a new sense of energy. I watched from the sidelines as they talked about their past, about what they had missed over the years. It stung, seeing the warmth between them, knowing that I was just a placeholder. But I couldn't help but admire how they communicated with a kind of unspoken bond, something I could never share with her. I should have been okay with this. After all, we had agreed on a divorce after a year. But the thought of it, the finality of it all, kept me up at night. I tried to convince myself that it was for the best. I would get my money, live the life I had always wanted. But what about the time we had spent together? What about the connection we had, even if it was just a business agreement wrapped in a veil of marriage? I decided that I couldn't just let go. I couldn't let her slip away without fighting for something. I started thinking about how to keep her, how to make her see me as more than just a means to an end. Lucia had no clue about my plans, about the thoughts running through my mind. But it was then that I realized something. Lucia wasn't just my wife anymore. She was an enigma, someone I could never fully understand. Her thoughts, her intentions, seemed beyond me. And that's when things began to shift. One evening, after a long day of pretending everything was normal, Lucia pulled me aside. She looked at me, her usual coldness now replaced by something unreadable. "Jorge," she said softly, "I need to talk to you." I was immediately on guard, wondering what she was up to this time. Had she figured out my plans? Was this her way of pushing me away more firmly? But instead of the cold, calculating businesswoman I had grown used to, she surprised me with something unexpected. She asked me about my life, about my hopes, my dreams, and I found myself answering her questions, surprised at how much I had held back over the years. "I just want a fresh start," I said, before I could stop myself. "I've spent so long trying to make this work. But maybe it's time for both of us to move on." She nodded, her gaze softening. "I understand," she said quietly. "But what if moving on doesn't mean we have to completely forget what we had?" It hit me then. Lucia wasn't as cold as I had thought. She had her own version of the truth. She was playing her part in this marriage, but she wasn't playing by my rules. She had already made her decision. But I wasn't ready to give up yet. That night, I lay awake, replaying her words in my head. I couldn't figure out why she was being so vulnerable. It didn't make sense. This was supposed to be the end. Divorce. But somehow, with every conversation, she was drawing me back in. I was stuck between two worlds, the life I could have with her and the one I was desperate to create for myself. I couldn't decide which path to take. The money was tempting, but the bond we had, even if it was based on convenience, kept pulling me back. I wasn't ready to lose her, no matter how much I pretended I was. But as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I realized one thing. I wasn't the only one playing a game. Lucia had her own plans, and I was just a pawn in them. The following weeks were full of small victories and subtle losses. Lucia and Makoto's closeness seemed to grow with each passing day. I watched as they spent hours together, talking about their past, making plans for their future. It felt like I was invisible, like I no longer existed in their world. But I couldn't give up. I had made a promise to myself that I would not go down without a fight. I started getting closer to Lucia, trying to remind her of the bond we once shared. I would surprise her with small gestures, flowers, meals, anything to show that I was still here, that I still cared. But Lucia wasn't the same. She had changed. She was colder, more distant, almost like she was closing herself off from me. It was as if she had already made up her mind, and I was just the final obstacle before she could be with Makoto. One evening, she came to me, her eyes locked on mine with an intensity one hadn't seen before. "Jorge," she said, her voice low and steady. "I know what you're trying to do. I see the games you're playing." I froze. Was she onto me? Had she figured out that I was trying to stop her from leaving? "You're trying to win me over," she continued, a small, almost sad smile playing at the corner of her lips. "But it's too late for that. I've already made my choice." I couldn't let her go, not like this. "Lucia," I whispered, my voice shaking with emotion. "Please, don't do this." She raised her hand, silencing me. "Jorge, this isn't about love anymore. This is about what's best for both of us. We've been living a lie for far too long." It stung. Her words were like a slap in the face. I had spent so much time trying to win her over, trying to fix things that I didn't realize that we were already beyond saving. She turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, heartbroken and lost. I had no idea what to do next. The woman I had married was slipping through my fingers, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself retreating further into my own mind. Lucia had made her decision, and I was no longer part of her future. But that didn't mean I had to accept it. I began doing my own research, digging into Makoto's past, looking for anything that could shake the foundation of his relationship with Lucia. There had to be something. Maybe it was a lie, a betrayal, something that would make her second-guess her decision. But the more I dug, the more I realized how much power Makoto had over her. He was her first love, the man who had been there before me, the one who could pull her back in. I wasn't the first choice, and I would never be. I spent my days pacing the apartment, my mind spinning with thoughts of what could have been. Lucia was a force of nature, beautiful, intelligent, and strong. But in the end, she was a woman who wanted something more, something I couldn't give her. One evening, I sat down with a glass of whiskey, trying to drown my thoughts. That's when the phone rang. It was Lucia. "Jorge," she said, her voice calm but distant. "I need you to understand. This is the right thing for both of us." I couldn't respond. I didn't want to hear it. But at the same time, I couldn't hang up. "I'm not going to fight this anymore," she continued. "I want to move on." I want to be happy. And with that, I knew it was over. The years we had spent together, the moments we had shared, they meant nothing now. She had made her choice, and I had to live with it. The day of the divorce came quicker than I expected. It felt like a blur, paperwork, signatures, everything wrapped up in a neat little package. The lawyer told me that the settlement would be processed soon, and I would get what was promised. But even with the money in sight, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Lucia wasn't just a wife anymore. She had become a memory, a part of my past that I couldn't escape. As I walked out of the lawyer's office, I saw her standing outside, waiting for me. She didn't smile, but there was a look in her eyes, an understanding, a quiet acknowledgement of everything that had happened between us. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that I hadn't expected. "I truly do." I nodded, unsure of what to say. I had wanted this. I had wanted the freedom, the life that I could build on my own. But now that it was here, it felt empty. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there for a moment, watching her go, before I realized something. It wasn't the money that would make me happy. It wasn't the divorce settlement or the new life I was about to build. It was her, Lucia. I had lost her, and no amount of money could fill that void. The weeks after the divorce were a blur. I tried to focus on my career, on the future I had planned for myself, but it was hard to ignore the hole in my chest. Lucia was gone, and I was left with nothing but the echo of her absence. I started dating again, hoping to fill the void, but no one could compare to her. There was always something missing, something that reminded me of what I had lost. I tried to move on, but the truth was, I was stuck in the past. One night, I received a call from her. I hadn't heard her voice in so long, and hearing it now was like a shock to my system. "Jorge," she said, her voice tentative. "I need to talk to you." I felt a surge of hope, but I quickly pushed it down. What was there to talk about? She had made her decision, and I had made mine. "What is it, Lucia?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been thinking," she said slowly, "about everything." I waited, my heart racing in my chest. Was she coming back to me? Could it be possible? "I realized something," she continued. "I made a mistake. I should have fought for you, for us. But I let fear get in the way. And now, I don't know how to fix it." Lucia's words hit me like a tidal wave. I had spent so much time convincing myself that I was better off without her, that moving on was the right choice. But now, as I heard her confess her feelings, I realized that I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. "Lucia, you can't just come back like nothing happened," I said, my voice shaking. "I've moved on."